Welcome back everyone to Teresa Talks. I'm your host Miguel Lieza, and today's show we have a special guest. He ran for National Chief Assembly for First Nation, Chief Crowchild.
Yes.
How are you today?
I'm good, thank you.
Awesome.
And thank you so much for coming today as well. We surely appreciate your insights and input for your running and how you did your campaign.
Okay. I'm honored.
Oh no, we're honored. Thank you so much again.
So Chief Crowchild, can you tell me a little bit about your experience while you're running your elections?
Okay. Well, I ran for the position of National Chief for Assembly First Nations.
Mm-hmm.
That is a representative for all the chiefs across Canada.
Wow.
So about 647 chiefs. You're sort of representing it. It's an advocacy group. It's not so much about a political position,
Right.
but it's very political
Mm-hmm.
because it talks across all the political parties across Canada, all the federal parties. So my experience, okay, it was in this COVID time, it was a time of a lot of Zoom calls every day
Right.
to all the chiefs across Canada. Every day was a new group of chiefs,
Mm-hmm.
but the same candidates. So we kind of know each other really well.
That's good.
Yeah, and it was really good because I think it created this atmosphere of respect for each other because we knew what each other's strengths and weaknesses were.
Mm-hmm.
So we were really supportive. I mean, when it came down to the election, the final election, that you throw your support behind somebody, and it boiled down to the two, and it looked like the one who made second place he had a lot of support, but in the end he says, no, I'm going to step down and throw my support behind the National Chief,
Mm-hmm.
which is Roseanne Archibald, first woman chief of the Assembly of First Nations.
Right. Sure, wow.
I did hear that on the news, and that's
Yes.
very honorable that
Yeah.
there's finally a woman in politics that can
Awesome,
represent our First Nations.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just time, in our traditional beliefs, a man may be the leader of something,
Mm-hmm.
but the backbone is always the women.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that the time is right for a woman to lead that role.
Right.
Because we're going through an era of real big change now.
Right, especially
It's
in the
always
modern,
been.
in modern age.
Yeah. But you certainly learn, from my experience of what I learned was the wants and needs of communities across Canada is a bit different than what chiefs are saying.
Mm-hmm.
That was a real eye-opener for me. So that's why I say it's an era of real change for the chiefs.
Awesome. Thank you for that.
And how did Roseanne Archibald do as the First Nations Canadian chief manage and go through all the reconciliation and the children that we've been finding missing and everything? That would have been a big role because that came out at the same time you guys were campaigning.
Mm-hmm.
That must have been very difficult.
Well, it did become a flashpoint, for sure. And I think with all the other candidates, we all shared the same passion for this is really big news.
Yes.
Because you're dealing with the emotional ties that all those that ran for that position. They got relatives that were those missing,
Mm-hmm.
unmarked graves. So it was emotional for everybody. For National Chief Roseanne Archibald, I think that when it comes to reconciliation, it's not something we can do right now, because there's still so many more graves to be found.
Right. Yeah.
It's maintaining a sensibility, maintaining a level of calmness. I think that should be her role right now,
Right.
because it's going to be emotionally charged for quite a long time still.
And healing.
The healing will come in time. Right
Yeah.
now, it's about just uncovering.
You're right. The investigation
Yeah, we don't want to jump so quickly to healing and reconciliation.
because we have to find more and go through more of it and see where they're at. Because I know there was another First Nations band that mentioned the other day that they were going to start looking for unmarked graves around their residential schools as well.
Yes, and even Tsuut'ina's going to do the same.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
And I know back east where my band is from, I don't think we've had any residential schools within the Woodlands band in Nova Scotia. But we may have had something close by another, part of the province, of course.
I would think that probably some of the children of the time were taken away to a residential school,
Yes.
and they did come back.
Yes,
So the school may not have been close to you, but the same thing happened.
I'd say it would happen across all of Canada.
Alberta had the most residential schools.
They did. I remember reading that too as I was learning my history, and part of what we were doing, that Alberta had the most, and then I think it was BC second, and then third would be Saskatchewan,
I
right?
think it was Saskatchewan.
So it's quite the western provinces were hit the hardest.
Yeah.
So again, that's because we're the youngest provinces.
I guess so. Maybe, I don't know the rationale behind that. Maybe the church influence with Catholics was much stronger.
Right.
You know, the Jesuits and all that.
Mm-hmm. That could be just it as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what are you doing with your time now, since like the election is over?
Well, you know, I'm stepped back from politics.
Right.
Because it does take a lot of thought. I put a lot of energy to running for politics. But, you know, I do a lot of contract work.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, I've done some work with data analysis, because that's kind of what I know how to do.
Yeah.
So I got hired for that. I'm working with the E-Fry Society.
Can you tell me a little bit about what that is?
The E-Fry Society is a society group that works with those that have been incarcerated and have stepped out. Its focus is mainly women, but it's not limited to that.
Right.
For the men, it's the John Howard Society.
Mhm.
These are national programs across Canada. So they have a high population of Indigenous in there,
Mm-hmm.
and so they hired me to come in and work with those that are looking at restorative justice or alternatives to jail time. So that's one, and then I got hired to work on a TV series.
Oh, really?
Yeah, with this, Aboriginal People's Television Network, otherwise known as APTN.
Mm-hmm.
The show's called The Other Side. It's paranormal investigation.
Oh, paranormal, like spiritual kind of?
Ghosts.
Ghosts? Oh, really? I didn't know like Aboriginal people had that kind of like.
You're on Aboriginal land,
Mhm.
all the spirits are here.
Really?
Yeah.
Yep.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I know that.
And
What do you know?
And Aboriginal people are very intuitive.
Alright.
Yes.
Mm.
Very intuitive. When I was when I was going to New Orleans, I kept saying I have to go to New Orleans, and I'm not sure why.
Mm-hmm.
And I found out that my ancestors were actually part of the war in the early 1800s, and they were the liaison between the French and the English.
Mhm.
So that's why I always had this calling to go there. And we are very intuitive people. We listen to our hearts and our tummies.
Mm-hmm. I guess it comes to the culture, I guess. Eh?
Well, that's where, you know, in New Orleans they call them Cajuns, but they were Acadians from up in Nova Scotia area.
Yes.
Mhm.
And it just, you know, with that New Orleans drawl, it just became known as Cajuns.
Wow, that's very interesting. Like, that's really good to know, I guess. Yeah, like that's, I come from Philippines, and we're kind of like the same way, so that's kind of surprising to me.
Yeah, and a lot of the native people helped with the Underground Railway.
Yes.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and that's for moving blacks to freedom.
Ah, that's
So
awesome.
we were instrumental in that.
Sweet.
Two that are the main investigators,
Oh, okay.
and I'm brought in sort of as the spiritual guide
Mm-hmm. Wow.
because of the traditional practices.
Like, would you just be around Calgary, just filming, like?
No,
the-
this year is going to be Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Alberta.
Oh, so you're going around Canada? Wow.
Oh yeah, it's been all across Canada all those times.
That's awesome.
This year it's going to be the prairie provinces.
Cool.
Focus on it.
And where have you found the most spiritual activity?
Spiritual activity. I'm new to the show, so I don't know where it is right now, but probably going to be looking at a site out in Sitka, Blackfoot.
Right.
Yeah, in the Sandhills, because there's a lot that passed away from the smallpox.
Oh, right. Yes.
Yeah, and then the residential schools, Old Sun. It's possible that we will be there as well.
Right. Yeah.
Can you explain the politics in your nation?
Well, I mean, we've been enveloped by a Canadian discourse.
Mm-hmm.
So in that, what came out was this thing called the Indian Act, and that sort of laid out how politics are run. So they became known as Indian Act chiefs, really, because we went into electoral system. It stepped away from traditional chieftainship. So in that, for many years, it was that chief was appointed, or voted in. People have to get used to the idea of voting.
Mhm.
And they would serve a term of 2 years. For every nation that's still under that, it creates confusion because a chief can never get anything done in 2 years.
Yeah, it's too short of a time.
It's too short. And we were like that for many years. And then we moved to a 3-year term.
Right.
It's a compromise. I think 4 would have been better, but a compromise, now it's 3.
It's better than nothing, so.
Well, it's better than what it was.
Yeah, no, 2 years, but
Yeah. We had to create our bylaws.
Mhm.
They were always there, but we solidified them a lot more. The idea was to give the power back to the people,
Right.
because this is a system that's invasive to us.
Mm-hmm.
It's not our system,
No.
so we have to find ways to live within that system. And this is why we create all of these bylaws and that. So on my nation, Tsuut'ina, we have 1 chief and then 12 council members,
Right.
which is quite large. I would have liked to have seen it reduced in terms of council size,
Mm-hmm.
maybe in half, but right now that is what it is. We develop policies that would, if we need to have change within our bylaws, within our mandates, within our constitutions, it has to go through a whole vetting process. And you have 2 streams, stream A, stream B. When it comes to decision making, we all want to go to stream A because that's where the people have all the say.
Mm-hmm.
Failing that, it can go to stream B, which means chief and council can make the decisions then. Very rarely have we ever gone to stream B. It's always been with the people. And as Tsuut'ina, this is how we're identifying our sovereignty.
Mm-hmm.
And for all the chiefs before me and the chiefs after me, sovereignty has always been number 1. And our views of that. So we see ourselves as a separate nation. We're not Canadians.
Mm-hmm.
We're not Albertans. We're at Tsuut'ina. Yeah. So in doing that, it takes a lot of people to wrap their minds around it.
Mm-hmm.
You have a federal and a provincial government who have no interest in seeing us as a sovereign nation. They want us to be reduced down to a municipality, but we're not, because we are distinct. We are distinct people. We have our own language.
Right.
Which is different from the Blackfoots, which is different from the Stonies. We have our own distinct language.